Hi, guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Elevate Your Coaching Business. We're going to take today's episode in a slightly different turn because if you've been here with me for a while, which I know many of you have, you will know how much value I place on transformational leadership. And today I'm joined with one of the ladies that has actually supported me with my transformation and has been a huge stand for me. Tina, I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. I will always, always, always be a huge stand for you.
I'm so grateful for you and for this journey. And look, you and I are both a huge stand for this work, and we want to be able to bring it to everybody. And I want anyone who's listening to this today to really get grounded in what's possible for this. Like, for me personally, my results skyrocketed because of who I got to be within this training. So it's more than just training, it's who I got to be. And it is for me the secret sauce that actually will support you to 10x, 20x, 30x your results. So whether or not you're in corporate or you're a business owner, I really implore you to lean in and pay attention to what Tina's going to talk about today. Because if you're not seeing the results that you want, you find that you're self-sabotaging, that there's things that are getting in your way. Maybe you're outwardly confident and inwardly you're like I was, which is a dying like piece of myself going, who is this person? Like terrified somebody was going to see me. And that's exactly what was sabotaging me and stopping me from moving forward. So Tina, I suppose let's start from the very beginning. You get to introduce yourself and tell everybody why you're so amazing and what you do.
Thank you, Joanne. It's such an honor to be here. My name is Tina Paulus-Krause, and I grew up in corporate, right? Like I'm 55 years old today. About 8 years ago, my daughter, who was 24 years old at the time, called me on the phone and said, "Mom, something really bad happened last night." And it was at a time in my career when I was like at the top of my career, right? I was a high performing, hypo, they called it, right? These people that are like you're grooming to move up in the organization. And everything on paper looked really good, right? Like if you looked at me from the outside, everything looked really good. But yet here I was inside looking on the outside for all the validation and for all the reasons why and all that kind of stuff. And when my daughter called me that day, she'd almost died the night before from a drug and alcohol overdose. And it was this moment in my life where my whole life just shut down and stopped. And there's so much beauty in that moment today, because it gave me the opportunity to just pause and reflect on life and figure out what was working and what wasn't working. Like obviously there was stuff in life that wasn't working. This is happening with my child, and I, was pretending not to know. And so it was through that process and through supporting my daughter through her addiction that I say I sent her to drug and alcohol rehab, and I sent myself to emotional rehab, which was the, call it a container, call it a program. It was transformational leadership, right? I showed up at this transformational leadership, and through the process of really, quote unquote, taking myself on, I learned how to look inside for the answers versus constantly looking outside for the answers. I was always looking for like, there must be a reason why this is happening. And, once you turn that mirror around, even though it's incredibly painful, we start to see what those limitations look like. And through that process, Joanne, I up-leveled my life and my internal just way of being so much that I was like, I didn't even know these tools were out there. I get to support people for the rest of my life to know these tools and to embody. It's the embodiment of it. And I know that that's where we're going to go, but like to embody these tools. Because I had a ton of leadership development. I'd gone to all the classes, all the conferences, read the books, done the podcasts, all that kind of stuff, but it's all theory. It's all theory. So what we get to build today is we get to build safe space where people can come and embody
Yeah.
who it is that they get to be.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point too, is that safe space. Because just like me, like my entire corporate career was human resources. So leadership, coaching was a part of it. And it was just theory because it was not being like, it wasn't the sandwich approach. It wasn't, putting it together and sticking it like glue. It was,
Right.
let's talk about doing this, but then we won't actually embody it. And even when I went to start my business, I did mindset work and what was called deep mindset work. And it like just scratched the surface, because I know for me, when I started the transformational leadership, it was the embodiment piece that was what was missing. Because, and I even remember asking this question when I when I was signing up originally for it, was like, what's going to make this different? Because I've done courses before, I've done programs, I'm not afraid to invest in myself, but why is this different? And I always remember it's actually Donnie's saying to me,
Yeah.
it's actually that you're stepping into it and continuously choosing it every day, and it fits into the core of who you are. And that was what made it so different. But I'm like, what do you see? Like when we talk about embodiment, you and I both know what it means now because
Yeah.
we've been through it. But
Right.
for anyone that has done mindset work, because let's be real, a lot of people have, and
Yeah.
they're frustrated because they're not seeing the results and all these promises
Right.
are out there.
Right.
How is this different?
It's different because of the coaching, right? I never ever had anybody who saw me or that I knew of that saw me, and not only did they see the greatness in me, but they came in to help pull me up, right? To rise me up. They're like an intentional to help rise me up, to say, hey, Tina, this is what's working with you. Hey, this is what's not working. To like really be honest with me in that safe space. So embodiment is, when you go to the conference and you learn the theory or you learn the model or you learn the thing that really lights you up, embodiment is, now I'm going to take that piece of theory, I'm going to take that learning, I'm going to take whatever that is, and I'm going to go out into the real world and I'm going to practice it. So if it's confidence, I'm going to go practice confidence. Maybe singing is something that I haven't done in 60 years, right? And I want to sing, but I'm not confident enough to go out and do it. Embodiment means I'm going to stretch myself, and I'm probably going to have a coach right here holding my hand because it's really scary in those moments. But I'm going to stretch myself and I'm just going to go to some local establishment and sing tonight, right? Because that's the embodiment of it. What is it that's missing? What's not working in your leadership, in how you're showing up? It's really facing that and then going, okay, how do I learn to embody a new way? What way of being? Who do I get to be to actually be that person? Because I know that that's who I am. I'm just not sure how to access it. I'm not sure how to unlock it and bring it out. And so that embodiment is just safe space with the support around you to stretch yourself into new ways of showing up in your life. And it's not always perfect at first, right? When I started flexing some of this stuff, the clearing conversations, I'd want to go have a conversation with somebody that maybe my relationship wasn't awesome with. And I go in and it didn't go awesome, but it went better than it had in the past.
Yeah.
And so then the next time I go back in, it'd be a little bit better. Like I'd do a little bit, I'd land a little bit more strong. So it's about, knowing who you are today, knowing what's missing, and then having an intentional plan to go, okay, this is where I get to stretch myself and continue to practice. And Joanne, that's where you come in, right? Like that's where the coaching comes in, because a lot of the times I may not know how to do that, or I may not be confident, or I may need the accountability partner or whatever that looks like. But never in my life had I had somebody that saw me higher than I did. And when you find that person, when you find that coach, when you find that program, when you find that container, it allows you to be free and practice who it is that you say you get to be. So the embodiment is just embodying it, like literally living it in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And it's like having somebody in the trenches with you, like that for me was life changing because, somebody standing for you and sharing with you what's not working, but really speaking into your soul as to what's not working, that you can't avoid it. For me, it was like being in a box of mirrors going, I hate that you see me and I love it. And I'm terrified and I want to throw up and I don't know what to do with it. But because you're not alone in it, you can continue to take those baby steps forward. Because for me, that's always what was different. It was always easy to project out and blame somebody else for, X, Y, and Z happening, whether it's in work or whether it's in life. But it's different when you get to reflect inwards and, say, okay, well, I've created this, and am I willing to accept that I've created it? And am I willing to embody a different way to show up so that I can create something different? Because that's what we all want in life, is to have something amazing.
Yeah, completely. And we don't always know how to do it, right? Like I want that, but instead of like getting into committed action to go and get it, we like sit back here and play victim and feel bad and all that kind of thing. And that coaching piece of it, that transformational embodiment piece of it is exactly what makes a difference. It's a difference between theory and embodiment. It's a difference between action and just sitting back and wishing and hoping.
Yeah. It's just a pipeline dream then for anything else. And
yeah.
Like for anyone that's like, oh, these words are great, right? Because there's a lot of, coaching words in here, and not everybody is going to be a coach. Because I know, say, a word for me that was always very triggering at the start because I didn't understand it was the word victim. I was like, how dare you call me a victim? Like, who are you to call me? As of course, projecting out, right? How dare you call me victim and it
Mhm.
was the best thing to ever happen. But how do we support people to be okay with receiving that language so they can have a breakthrough into creating the magical life that they want?
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of the process of the content of the actual 4 month program, because it takes 4 months to really sustain, like change a habit, right? Like to have a sustainable change that's going to continue on. We used to say it was 30 days. It's 4 months. So the program is intentionally 4 months long, and we intentionally work into allowing that receiving, right? Because it is at first, when, I'm a supporting promoter, so that victim is real. She's real. She like sits right here, and if
Mm.
I let her, she comes in. And so when you're not used to like accepting, like we get to accept those shadows. I think that's where I'm going with this. I'm rambling a little bit, Joanne, but like we all have these natural tendencies, we all have these natural behaviors, and they come with superpowers and they come with shadows, right? You can call them rackets, call them shadows, call them whatever you want. But when we also hear a lot about loving yourself. Loving yourself means I love myself in spite of my imperfections. I love myself in spite of sometimes I go to victim mode. Like when I was able to accept that about myself instead of like get mad about it, because I got mad about it at first too. Like, what are you doing calling me a victim? Like, what? That's the resistance. That's the dark night of the soul. That's the work, like getting through that internal, like, everybody has to see me perfect. I have to have this image, and when we get past that and down into it, it's like, oh, there you are, victim. I love you, and you get to go. So it really becomes a different way of looking at those shadows or those nerds or whatever it is. But for me, it was learning how to love myself in spite of those shadows that show up sometimes. So I don't pretend that those shadows aren't there
Yeah.
or get mad at them anymore. I welcome them in and go, oh, aren't you cute? And you don't get to have space here today. Right. So it's
Did you
about
call me
learning
cute?
how to, yeah, for me, it was about that space, that safe space to embody, because that's embodiment. Embodiment is loving my shadow. Even though she gets in my way sometimes, I get to love her and kindly put her aside. And
Mhm.
so that's not the way I've always thought about it. The way in corporate, this, we put on masks. Oh, I'm supposed to look like this. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to talk like this. I'm supposed to act like this. And all of a sudden we have all these shadows and we're not even ourselves anymore. The authenticity piece just leaves.
Mm.
And so bringing that authenticity piece back for me meant, and it's part of my contract, I get to be me in spite of the victim, in spite of not being grounded all the time, in spite of all those shadows that show up. Those shadows for me today are just red flags. You're not in your leadership. You're not in your leadership. Get back in your leadership. Get back in your leadership. So embodiment, going back to the embodiment piece, Joanne, it is all about the embodiment. It's learning how to embody the ways of being that actually work for you and create results.
Yeah, yeah. And like I even see this with my own clients too, because I'd say the majority of my clients have taken leadership development, are in that emotional intelligence, and the rest of them are, working their way towards it too, because they're seeing firsthand the big difference between somebody that has gone through the transformational leadership, emotional intelligence, embodiment piece versus those that haven't. It's like chalk and cheese because they
Yeah.
think differently, they approach things differently. It's now operating from possibility and then how can I versus I don't know if I should.
Yeah.
Am I really allowed to
Yeah.
do that? There's a massive gap there. And I'm sure you see that too.
Yeah, totally. And like I saw the gap in myself.
Yeah.
I went through this transformation in my own right, and then I was like, "Oh my goodness, if these tools can transform my life like they have." I mean, I started seeing the ripple effect everywhere in my life.
Yeah.
I get to do that for people for the rest of my life, kind of a thing, right? And it's literally, I know this may sound cheesy or whatever, but I'm cheesy, right? Like it's the work that's going to save the world.
Yeah.
I really truly believe that, because when we can all stand in that embodiment, stand in our power, it makes a big difference. And so that gap that I saw for me was like, okay, I went through it and I get it all now and it sounds really great, but I'm still not I'm not practicing it all the time.
Yeah.
And so after years of practicing it, like it takes a long time. Still to this day, I practice the tools every day because the noise doesn't go away. Those voices in our head don't go away. They're always there. So for me, when I would see that gap, I'd be like, okay, I get to go back in. So I would go back in and I would coach. And then I went back in and I would coach again. And every time I would go back into the work, I would up level my own leadership. I would up level my own confidence and my own how I was showing up and what that looked like. And I was like, oh, wow, what if I captained, right? Like, and then I would go back in as a captain. And every single time I would go back in, I was up leveling how I was showing up. And before transformation, like 100% of the time, I was probably showing up in my shadows, right? In those rackets. It wasn't working for me. Today, 90% of the time, I'm in it. And that 10% that I'm not is my red flag that I'm either burnt out, or I get to take a rest, or I get to have some self-care, or whatever it is. But the whole difference is leading with that intention versus just letting life lead you. For
Yeah.
me, that's what it.
For sure. And for me, who's somebody who's very results driven, like I used to, and still again, there's times where I get to shift into it, but
Yeah.
I used to be driven by my results and made them mean something about me. That if I was not getting results, I was a shit person. I was, not good. And it would actually hold me back and I would stop. So I was never able to reach my full potential because I had all those thoughts. So anyone who is very results driven and is frustrated that you've hit this wall, this gets to be the next step that you go to. It doesn't matter what you've heard about like woo-woo mindset and all that. You get to decide if you're willing to take yourself on and actually uncover the pieces of you that are actually holding you back. And like Tina was talking about the shadow pieces, and choose to accept them and then move forward. And Tina, just like following on from that, I want to really talk about the program because you and I are both the same. Everybody gets to go, right? This is for
Everyone
everybody.
gets to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So will you talk about it?
Yeah, yeah. So because of the fact that, we went through this program, and it was really the work that we just don't talk about,
Yeah.
especially in corporate. And it's what would literally support corporate to grow, like any team, any organization, whatever it is. So it's emotional intelligence. So when I say that, like in a lot of my keynotes, I'll say, I was looking everywhere on the outside for all the answers to why my life wasn't working. And then when I turn that mirror around, it was like, oh, what was I pretending not to know? And so this program is it's a safe way for somebody to come in and rapidly transform, to rapidly get to that emotional intelligence and have a specific, the process is proven. Like the work has been around for how many years, right? The process is proven. You and I have both seen hundreds and hundreds of people go through it and literally transform their lives. And so it's a 4-month program. We come for 3 days and do what we call inner works. So it's literally inner works. It's about going deep, dark night of the soul. Let's get down in there and figure it out. And then what happens, here's the key and here's the kicker and here's why it works. When that 3 days is over, you then are surrounded by a team of people, an individual coach, you've got group coaching, we've got modules that go out every week, but we literally stay with you. We don't just go, okay, nice program, see ya. We literally stay with you from a coaching perspective, wrap around you from a place of love. And then the whole program is intentionally for the rest of the 4 months meant to build on that. So you go away for 3 weeks out into the real world, we call it, and practice the embodiment of what you learned in that 3 days. And we're just touching the surface at this point, right? And we're just kind of getting in there and figuring it out. And then you come back for 4 days of quantum. And quantum is all about breaking through. It's about let's dig deep, let's go down. We go catharsis, the whole 9 yards, because a lot of the stuff that holds us back as adults is what we had from 0 to 8. It's what we learn in our childhood, what we learn as we're growing up. And so we go deep in that quantum 4 days. And then again, you leave that 4 days and you're surrounded by a process and people and check-ins and all that kind of stuff as you're practicing out in the real world. And then we have what we call LEAP, and that's a 2 to 3 month program where it's literally out in the world and you have a one-on-one coach the whole time that you're going through that. So LEAP stands for Leadership Excellence through Advanced Practices. So it's learning things like neutrality, right? Like we don't even think or talk about neutrality, but what if you didn't have to have emotional reactions? What if you could just be neutral about stuff? And we learn, and it's the deep embodiment and stuff like that. So the whole 4 months is really meant to take yourself on. And if I had to say, what's the one sentence? This program is about taking yourself on and really doubling down on what's working in your life and cracking open what's not working and having a full support system through it all to really support you so that it sustains through the rest of your life. You know, I know how many graduates do we know that didn't stay in the work and now they're in the drift again, right? This is a daily, to this day, daily. I practice it every minute. I practice it. When I find myself drifting, I'm back in. We drift, we come back in. But if we don't have those tools when we drift to understand and know how to come back in, we stay out there. I
Yeah.
stayed out there for the first 50 years of my life. That's where I had my permanent residence, right? And so today it's like, no, I get to take my life back, right? We get to take our life back. Is life, so I would, you know, when I'm talking to people, is life running you or are you running your life? Which way is it?
Yeah.
Because if it's life is running you, there's a way to stop that. There's a way to take control of it. There's a way to take your power back. And if you'd like to do it rapidly and create long-term transformation, the global leadership experience is the container that's going to do that with you.
Yeah, 100%. And just if anyone is curious, like from an actual results point of view, I'm going to share mine, full transparency. I only knew toxic relationships, work and at home, before I chose transformational leadership. I met my partner, Robert, the day before I started essentially Inner Works. The day before, that was when I met him. And we have the most fabulous relationship and are creating a 10/10 life. My business grew by 86.9% by the time I got to the end of the 4 months of that very first training I was in. So they're just some like small, I'm going to call them small results. They're two key results,
Yeah.
but that was at the
Yeah.
start and it's been 3 years since. So, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're somebody that's like, yeah, absolutely, I'm into, you know, mindset, or you're like, no, I'm all about results. That it's for both and you get to choose it.
Yeah. Yeah. And even before that, it's about choosing yourself. For me, it was about choosing myself. I got results. I got results before transformation. I got results. Usually there was a path of destruction behind me
For
when I
sure.
got those results, you know, but I got the results. And so it's, you know, today my marriage is like amazing because we've both been through this work. We now know how to communicate. We know how to talk. I've been married 3 times. Like this is my 3rd marriage. And what before transformation, like I was headed for a 3rd divorce kind of a thing. And so this work teaches us how to communicate in a powerful and loving way. It teaches us how to choose ourselves first so that we can pour into everyone else like we know we want to.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us, I'll raise both hands. I'm a supporter. So I was supporting everybody else while I was on the ground.
Thanks.
Yeah. And it didn't work. Like that doesn't work. And so now I can support people 10 times what I used to, and I'm not on the ground,
Yeah.
you know? So it's about learning how to take your life back, take control of your life back. And you can spend, you know, a bazillion years in therapy, or you can come to transformation and learn how to make it happen like that, you know? So, and I'm not knocking therapy. It works. It's great in certain situations. Transformation is about taking yourself on from the inside out and creating results.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
The results that you say you want.
Exactly. Yeah, it's your
Yeah.
vision. So for everybody that's listening, you will see that there is a link to be able to look at GLE, and you can absolutely connect with me to have a conversation about it. You hear me talking about this work all the time and how it has completely transformed my life. How Robert has completed the training, Ryan, his son, has completed the, like, we're a real stand for this. And it is the one thing that I will put my hand over my heart and say, this will support you to create the most incredible life. Because not only is it going to support you to create your life, I can feel myself getting emotional, but it's also, you're going to, like, the friends and the connections that you make in this, there's nothing like it. I've never experienced something like it, because you're seen always. You don't have to pretend to be somebody else. You are seen always. So definitely invite you to click on the link, connect with me. Anybody who's watching this, I'm going to have connected conversations with. But yeah, I implore you to really have a look at this and take yourself on to the next level. Don't operate from mediocrity. Don't assume that things are going to change. This is where you get to take yourself on. So Tina, I want to say thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of this, and for continuing to be a stand for this work. You're amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joan. It was a pleasure.